This is Search Marketing Now, broadcasting live from our home base here in the New York area. As Kevin said, I am Chris McDonough on behalf of the Search Marketing Now webcast team and Optify, our sponsor. Thank you very much for joining us for this really interesting topic, marketing along the buyer's journey. Today we are very happy to welcome Christine Crandell from New Business Strategies and our friends at Optify, Erez Barak. Hi, you guys. How are you doing today?
Doing good. Glad to be here.
Doing well. Thanks for having us, Chris.
Erez, it's always a pleasure, and thanks again for being here. And Christine, I'm going to turn things over to you in just 1 second, but I'd like to let the audience know just a couple of things. If you need some help or have a question for our speaker, just use that Ask a Question box, and we, of course, will do our best to help you out. I also have a couple of widgets at the bottom of the page for you to check out. You can email a friend, check out our speaker's bio. You can check out Optify and SMN. If you do check out SMN, make sure you check out our brand new research report, Analytics Tools in the Facebook Era. You can find that in the Research tab. And, of course, there's one last widget to check out, IMT Courses widget, which is our new sister company, and yet another resource for your Internet marketing education. All right, we are also recording this broadcast, and we will make it available for viewing on demand this afternoon. I will let you know when it's ready, or just check back at our website, again, at searchmarketingnow.com. You can look in the on-demand section. All right, with all that business taken care of, I have a couple of quick polling questions for you guys, and I'm going to introduce Christine. First off, here's the first polling question. To whom do you sell, and what is your go-to market model? Business to business, business to consumer. We use a direct sales force. We sell primarily via the web. We sell through channels and our partners. We use a blended sales model. So just hit one of those radio buttons and hit Submit Answer. And I'm going to give you just a second to do that and formally introduce Christine Crandell. She is a B2B marketing and strategy expert with more than 20 years' success in driving demand, crafting market, shaping vision and strategy, and building brands for leading technology organizations. Her approach to marketing and strategy has led to recognition as one of Silicon Valley's most influential women for 2010 by the Silicon Valley San Jose Business Journal. All right, Christine, I am going to push out these results here for everybody. I believe I have them ready. And then I am going to go ahead and push out the next polling question for you all. 1 second, I will do that. There it is. And let's have you guys all answer this one. Has your sales cycle changed over the past 12 to 24 months? Our sales cycle has not changed. Parts of our sales cycle have gotten longer. Prospects are disengaging halfway through, but come back 6 to 12 months later to buy. Our sales cycles are changing, and we're not sure why. And the last option would be prospects only contact us with specific questions and a price. Okay, Christine, while we're waiting for the results on this one, if you wouldn't mind telling our audience what we have planned today, and then I'll push out the results and get you going.
Great. Thanks, Chris. And welcome, everybody. On the agenda, what we're going to cover a wonderful process. We're going to talk about how selling has changed, which is why those poll results that were just pushed out to you are really important. We're going to go through the buyer's journey, which is an organizing principle, a model for really how to address how selling has changed, talk about the 5 organizing principles of the buyer's journey, and then we're going to turn it over to Optify, who are going to talk about how to really implement or align to the buyer's journey and how to actually discover what we're going to find out is these invisible 70% of the buyer's journey. And then we'll wrap it up with Q&A. So, Chris, do you have the poll results?
I do. There they are for this polling question.
Ah, interesting. Oh,
I like the way it's the bars are perfectly aligned for you all.
It is. I mean,
yeah.
really interesting. So 50% haven't changed, 13% are seeing it disengage, I should say, and then come back in 6 to 12 months. Really interesting. So, and that just sets it up for really some statistics that we really need to talk about, and that how selling cycles have changed. One of the things, or many of the things that we're seeing is, let's see, here we go, is that 70% right now of the buy cycle, and this is in B2B, and it's also in B2C, but you're really going to see it in B2B, is completed before the buyer or the prospect ever chooses to engage with the sales organization. And I would go so far as to say that's even more than just a sales organization. It's a sales and marketing organization. So they have gone on this process to figure out how they're going to solve this problem. They've done all this research, and it's not until really the end of that purchase cycle that that prospect says, okay, I'm now ready to engage with a vendor, to try to find out. And what happens, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that, is what happens is because this 70% is invisible, this 70% of this buy cycle that is self-directed by the buyer is something that companies aren't aware of. Sales guys have a really hard time taking that buyer that's engaged with them, that very informed buyer that's engaged with them, and now converting that into a customer, because the rules of the game have completely changed. And the result is that, on average, 50% of sales teams achieve quota. And what I have seen this year, because everybody I ask this question, and what I'm seeing is that number really is more like 25% of sales teams are achieving quota. That doesn't mean that the other 75% are bad sales teams. It really just talks about that there is this fundamental shift that has started to happen out in the marketplace, and we really need to figure out how to go and address that so that we can align better with the buyer. And this last statistic drives that home. This, to me, was such an eye-opening and mind-blowing statistic, and it's actually very, very true because I validated it. And what this basically says is when that prospect, who's gone through 70% of the buy cycle, who's already figured out who they want to buy and what questions that they have and what price they want to pay, when they actually have that first conversation with the salesperson, what they're finding is that 3% of those conversations are actually worthwhile. That means that 97% of those conversations didn't meet the expectation of that prospect, didn't provide the prospect with the information that they were looking for, wasn't good use of their time. And so that's reality. This is the result of us being in the new world, in the social era. And when we look at how do I deal with that world, right? I can't just have more salespeople, and we can't just do more integrated marketing and more marketing. We need to look at marketing and selling through a different lens. And the lens that we need to look at it through is through the buyer. Because buying today on the B2B side as well as B2C is trust-based, it's social, it's transparent. And guess what? The buyer's in control. So if the buyer is calling the shots, we really need to align to it. And that's what the buyer's journey is about. It's a set of organizing principles for aligning company functions and roles to, and here are the three important words, enable, engage, and establish these enduring relationships. So it's not about selling. It's not about let me go and market and try to inform somebody that they have a need and here's my product. It really is saying I'm now going to get in flow with my buyer, and I'm going to now become an advocate, and there's a way to really turn that into a great advantage. So let's talk about real quickly the 3 steps of the buyer's journey, the 3 phases, and why do this? Why does this now matter? So there are 3 phases. The first one is buyer enablement, and you're going to notice that I don't use the word customer. The guys from Optify will, but I don't use the word customer because all customers are buyers, but not all buyers are customers. And even if someone has just purchased and become a customer, they're still a buyer. They're still out there looking to validate their decision, and we're going to find out about that a little bit later on. So let's look at that first stage. That first stage, which has a 1 in it, is all of the steps in it that talk about how do I actually figure out I have a problem and how do I go about figuring out how I'm going to solve it. And so this is the enablement side. We have to enable buyers on this part of their journey. If you do this very well, right, if you understand how to go do this and enable your buyers, the result is you're going to have very high quality leads. And we're going to see a little bit later on what that really means in terms of ROI. 2 is the purchase validation. This is at the point where the buyer or the prospect is, engaged with sales. They have made their decision, and they're really now not in a learning mode, right? They're not looking for features and functions and, tell me what your corporate vision is. They are looking to validate from the salesperson everything that they've heard out there, everything they've heard in social media, everything they've heard. This is all about, is the salesperson actually telling me the truth? Are they validating what I've said, and are they validating my recommendation? And along the way, they're really trying to understand what the experience is going to be like as a customer. If you do this well, you're going to find that your revenue cycles really accelerate. And then the purchase happens, and you move into the third stage, right? This is post-purchase. This is buyer engagement. And in this particular stage, right, which is what we call typically customer service and support, this is all about delivering value, right? And value is more than just the product and the service that they purchased. Value comes in lots of different forms for lots of different types of buyers, and value changes over time. So just as in stage one, we had to get in flow with the buyer, same thing in stage three, we need to get in flow with the customer, and we need to really understand what are their expectations and what is the experience that they want, and how do they actually define value. If you do this well, what happens is that your expansion opportunities will happen earlier, and they will happen a lot faster. So now let's dig into what these different stages actually mean. So here is the first part of the buyer's journey, right? This is buyer enablement. And let's kind of step through these stages, because the titles might be a little misleading. So I'm now at the very beginning. I'm at problem definition. I'm at the bottom of the screen. And so I, as the buyer, am having a trigger point. Something is causing me to wake up one morning and say, oh my God, there has got to be a better way. And we've all had that, whether it's a car, whether it's buying a sales commission application, whether it's buying a piece of capital equipment. We've all had that wake up in the morning and when you've said, I've had enough, I'm going to go change it. In the problem definition stage, this is where the buyer is internal in the organization coming together with other constituents, because you're going to have multiple buyers involved in your purchase decision, and they're going to say, do we all agree that this is a problem that warrants solving? Do we agree that as an organization that we're committed to solving this problem? Are we going to put together a team? Do we have budget? Earmarked, we might not know how much, but this is all of that internal stuff that starts to happen within an organization that says, yes, I feel and we are as a team committed to solving this problem. At the end of this particular stage, there's a team put in place, or at least there's somebody's tasked who's trying to go out and research how to solve this problem, and they go on to solution search. What happens in solution search is not going out there and saying, well, let me go find out, who does sales, commissions, or who does, marketing automation. At this particular stage, the buyer, and there could be multiple buyers in the team, are out there saying, how have my peers solved this problem? So here you're going to find folks are going to go to social media, they're going to go to LinkedIn groups, they're going to go talk to, the guy down the street that they know, they're going to talk to Gartner, they may go talk to someone that is in an industry association. They're looking to understand, did their peer group actually solve this problem? And what were the different alternatives that their peer group actually explored? Now, at this point, you might actually start to see someone touch your website. They might download a white paper. They might click on a YouTube video. They might attend a webinar. But they're in the learning mode. They're in the exploration mode. It's at the end of the solution search stage that they're saying, okay, we're going to go solve this problem with, say, for instance, marketing automation solution. We're going to go solve this problem with a piece of software, and we're really clear as to what the outcome is. And so this is one of the key principles of the buyer's journey, is that companies don't buy solutions, they buy outcomes. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. At the end of the solution search stage, right, so now we know what type of solution we're looking for, we have some criteria and requirements in place, and you go into the evaluation stage. At the evaluation stage is when you're really going to your marketing automation system will start to pick up that these buyers are now tapping into your website and they're showing up in lots of different places. And it's at this point that they're evaluating different solutions, they're going through alternatives, they're going to do a freemium. If you have that alternative, they're going to do a try and buy, they're going to do lots of different things, right? And then at the end of it, they've got their short list, and then they move into the validation stage. And it's at the validation stage that there really is what I call contact, right? There's this full contact between the buyer and the marketing organization, and more likely at that point they begin to have the contact with the sales organization. So when we say that 70% of that buy cycle is invisible, you're saying, what I'm saying is that you take from problem definition through half of the evaluation stage, you can pretty much say on average, you're not going to see that. It's not transparent to you because they're everywhere and anywhere out there on social media on their own self-directed journey, trying to figure out how they're actually going to go solve this problem. And so, the key is, do you understand, not by guessing, but do you really understand where they go, what they do, what they're looking for, who they talk to, and what do they do with that information? So that's something that you need to find out for every one of these stages. If we go through the rest of the buyer's journey, so now we've done purchase, and I didn't go through and define purchase because I think we all got that one totally nailed. Now let's go to the buyer engagement side. So this is post-purchase. What's really important at this point is that as the buyer has gone through the enablement side, remember this is the first part of the buyer's journey, they've had an experience. The tone that you use, the cadence of communication that you use, where you are in the physical and the virtual world sets an expectation of an experience. Now, you can craft that experience with intent and purpose, or you can let it happen organically. Either way, that buyer is going to have an experience, and the experience they've had to date sets an expectation of what it will be like post-purchase, what it will be like being a customer. And so in that purchase decision, this is B2B or B2C, and it really comes home in B2B. What it's going to be like as being a customer has as much weight in that purchase decision as what the actual product or service actually does. So you really want to look at this and say, I want to craft that experience with intent and with purchase so that I know what's happening and I know I can deliver value to the expectation of the buyer. If it doesn't happen, if there's a disruption in that experience, which will happen between sales and marketing, between sales and customer service, the trust that has been built to date has been broken. And that results in churn, that results in disengagement, that results in, for those of you who saw a buyer engage with you and then disengage and then come back 6 to 12 months later and purchase, that's one of the reasons why they do that. It's not all of the reasons, but it's one of the reasons. So you really want to look at the buyer's journey and saying, if I know where they go, what they do, what they're looking for, and who they talk to, I can work with marketing and customer service to define an experience which directly maps to the experience that buyer is looking for, and that's how you get the acceleration. But let's go through the rest of the buyer engagement side. Value delivery is straightforward onboarding, right? The customer has purchased a product or a service. It's all about getting them trained. It's about getting the product in place, making sure the product works as expectation, making sure that all the users are bought in, making sure all the pieces are in place so that they have that initial value delivery from the ROI of the product that they purchased. If you do that well, okay, and you understand what their expectations are, you can go on to nurture and retain. A lot of companies have a 90-day mark in which that if something happens in value delivery and that problem or that expectation is not rectified, you will have churn. So you'll have a lot of churn between value delivery and nurture retain if we're not tuned into the experience that customer is expecting. So in nurture and retain, it is now you're moving beyond the value of delivery of the product in and of itself. You're now looking at how do I begin to share best practices with the customer? How do I now begin to deliver the expectations that they're looking for and begin to deliver the value streams? And then we get to the next one, which is value streams, which is really focused on now I'm delivering value that's well beyond the solution. This could be everything from best practices. It could be putting them in contact or networking them into the rest of your customer base because they want to talk to peers. It could be someone who is looking to expand their customer or their experience, I should say, and they want a speaking opportunity. It's all those things, right? So value is not constrained to just the product. And then we move into expanded adoption, and the ultimate nirvana is evangelism. If we fully understand what happens on the engagement side of the buyer's journey and we deliver it out to the expectation of the buyer, what will happen is an unprompted, evangelism of the value you've delivered, and that's really the ultimate goal. That's really what you want to achieve. So let's talk real quickly about the 5 organizing principles of the buyer's journey. The first is aligning outward. A lot of organizations are really focused on making sure marketing and sales get along, and sales and customer service get along, and sales and finance get along, and they're inwardly oriented, right? They're so focused on how to get those 2 departments or those 3 or those 4 departments to operationally get along and work together that they forget that this really is about the buyer. So turn it around. Align the roles outward to the buyer. And then I mean that I mean it with intent. So look at a job description saying, what is this role's interaction as it relates to the buyer's journey, as it relates to value delivery, as it relates to enablement and engagement. The second is all things outcome oriented. Don't talk about features and functions. People don't buy features and functions. They're buying outcomes. They're buying the end state. That's what they're really looking for. And again, the end state is product and service and experience. So think about it in terms of end state. The third is understand your buyers, and this is by persona and role, how they behave digitally. Where do they go? What do they engage in? And it will vary by persona, and it will vary by stage. But you got to really understand that. Don't second guess it. Okay, go in and do the research. The fourth is consistency, consistency, consistency. Just as it is in the physical world, when we all relate to each other, if we behave consistently with each other, it develops trust, develops a degree of reliance. Same thing happens in the buyer's journey. You have to be consistent in the experience across the buyer's journey, consistent in how you communicate across the organization, consistent in tone, and consistent in the way you deliver value, which leads me to the last organizing principle that says that value, and again, we talked about value being much more than just the product, has to be matched to the persona of the different buyers that are involved in your target organizations and your target markets, and to the stage. And so you can do this with some great tools, and Optify will talk about theirs. You can also augment it with primary research. Do the research up front. It sounds hard. It's not that hard, and it's going to pay off amazingly. So how's it going to pay off? This is actually real-life return on investment from a couple companies that have adopted this that I know firsthand. It's accelerated the sales cycles by 3 to 5x. How does it accelerate it? Because you are in flow with the buyer. You're telling them what they need and what they're looking for at the point that they are looking for it, and you're not engaging in extraneous dialogue which has no value to the buyer. It reduces cost of sales by 30%. How do you get this reduction of cost of sales? You get it by having fewer marketing assets, higher performing marketing assets. You find that you also have fewer sales tools, higher performing sales tools, and in some cases, you may find that your sales model is completely unaligned with how the buyer wants to buy. And in one particular company, they actually cut the cost of sales by 70% because they did away with the majority of their sales force and went to an unassisted selling model because that's what the buyers wanted. And the last bullet is it drives some great, viral word of mouth, which is in essence the name of the game right now. the total name of the game in the social world. So that was a quick overview. And Chris, I think you've got a polling question that you're setting up, right?
Yes, I do. I am ready to hop back on, everybody. And Erez, I'm going to bring you on in just 1 second, but let's ask this question to the audience first. What marketing tactics are you using to generate leads for your sales team? Lead buying and cold calling, email marketing, rented and purchase lists, SEM, which would be PPC, CPM, or display, organic lead generation, online events, or offline events. Same drill here, everybody. Just hit one of those radio buttons and hit submit answer. And not to waste any time here, I would like to formally introduce our friend Erez Barak. He is the Vice President of Products and co-founder here at Optify. He is a frequent speaker at industry events. He was named among the top 25 innovators in 2010 by Seattle Business Magazine. And Erez, while we are also waiting, the results aren't quite in yet, I think we've got a few seconds for you to tell our audience a little bit about Optify, if you wouldn't mind.
Thank you, Chris. Hello, everyone, again. Thanks, Christine, for covering the first part of the webinar. Before I dive into great best practices and ways to implement the buyer's journey, let me tell you a bit about Optify. Founded the company in 2008, publicly launched it in March 2010, serving over 3,000 accounts and customers at this point, with a mission and a goal to enable marketers to drive more traffic and leads using SEO and social media, then convert these visitors to customers, and then enable them to easily measure and share the results. All of these items or all of these benefits will be covered during or as I speak about the buyer's journey. Again, there's a list of resources here. You'll get a list of those later. I think it's important to note we offer a 14-day free trial, so you can just dive into this and try Optify, see how it can help you. I think we're ready with the results now, Chris.
Great, Erez. I will push those out, and I'm actually a little surprised at these. The biggest portion of our audience is doing organic lead generation. I would have thought it would have been more on the SEM or email marketing side, but interesting.
So I think I'm saying two things. First, sort of expected is a mix. There is no sort of one method that's I would say more more popular than others, although organic lead generation with this audience seems to be a bigger part of the mix. Typically, you'll see more than one tactic. As I talk through the buyer's journey, I'll talk about different tactics and how we can use them and how, sort of at the end of the day, as a best practice, you end up with a mix of these tactics. So we're very excited here about what Christine has done in terms of research and bringing the buyer's journey together. Sort of taking a view from, as Christine noted, not the customer's view, but the actual buyer's view, allows you to really align your company resources and your company strategy to what the buyer is thinking. So what we did here is we took sort of the internal circle as the buyer's journey Christine just covered, and we covered it with two additional layers. One is, well, how does marketing, sales, customer experience within my company map to these stages? So you can see that marketing is really about stage one. Then there's a shift into sales when buyers actually make the purchase, and then there's an important piece that's really about customer experience and customer advocacy, making sure customers are delighted with what you do. We've also highlighted sort of the phase you're typically in. So as I start the buyer's journey, I'm typically a contact or a lead within the organization. Then marketing qualifies me as a lead. I become a sales-ready lead. I turn into an opportunity. And then once I purchase, I'm a customer and hopefully an advocate for the company. So this is just the idea here is sort of think how we map the buyer's journey into your organization. So what I'm mostly going to talk about is how we, as marketers, think of buyer enablement. And we call this sort of the invisible 70%, because most of the buyers are actually in that stage. Most of the buyers never hit purchase for you. Most of the buyers that marketing is really need to attract and talk to are within that stage, and I'm going to drill into that stage. Now, keep in mind, 70% of the buy cycle is actually complete before sales is engaged. So there's a lot of time spent during the buy cycle in this phase. This is where a buyer decides, well, are you as a vendor in my shortlist or not? If you don't make the shortlist, purchase is never going to happen. Next, it's where they get the first impression about my company, get the first impression about my offering. It's where expectations are set, and as you well know as a marketer, if you set the right expectation aligning with your offering, customers would be delighted. And then there's also a whole element of education that happens during this part of the buyer journey that is key in order to get to purchase and get successful customers. So what I'm really going to try and cover is this invisible 70%. I don't necessarily know who the people are. Frankly, you'll see that most of the buyers sometimes don't even know they have a problem, nor do they know about the solution set available to them at this stage. So how do I go about giving today's online marketing opportunities and online marketing possibilities? How do I go about marketing to this invisible 70%? And what we thought we'd do is start with a small example and then tie that back into the buyer's journey. So I'm not sure if anyone on the webinar had this problem specifically, but this is actually me 3 months ago, gazing down on the scale. And what I actually saw is a number. At that point, I'm thinking, well, is there a problem here? So what I go and do is I start educating myself. I start saying, well, for my age range, what's my weight? Or what's my average weight? Actually ask peers. Do you think I need to lose weight? And, I get a bunch of different answers. I'm also thinking about, well, did I miss an opportunity to set my weight? Did I miss an opportunity for a diet? Are there things out there I don't know about? And I'm starting to think, well, I do have a problem. So if I try to map that back to the buyer's journey, what I'm really doing here, and you would see we took out all the steps here and just left the problem definition. And when I'm defining the problem as a buyer, I don't know about you. I don't know about you as a vendor. Actually, I don't know about the possible solutions. I do know that, or I do end up being aware of the problem. Well, I'm slightly overweight here and committing to solving it. And I want to solve it. So there is a pain point. Now, as a marketer, you would hit these buyers when you publish in trade publications, when you go to trade shows, when you have discussions within social groups and QA sites, when you come to webinars like this. So this is all about educating on common issues, pain points, and missed opportunities. So now I understand, whoa, I do have a problem. I didn't even know this was a problem. There is a pain point here. And what's best here is really, this is not about you. This is about the buyer. So give me research. Give me studies. Give me case studies. Answer my questions. Give me some free analysis maybe that can help me understand if I have a problem. And let me download content without really being too aggressive or mentioning your brand. So what happens here, you're now part of that education process. As a vendor, you're now tied into this problem within the buyer's mind. Now, and I'll close the loop on measuring at the end of this webinar, but it is important to measure at every point. So what we measure here is actually downloads from our website, but more important, other places where we syndicate content. People who come back, followers, fans, referrals, and referring keywords are all leading indicators that the buyers are understanding the problem using my assets. Okay, so I have a problem. I get that. So next thing I do, I start searching for a solution. Oh, and there are many out there, okay? What I really want to learn is how peers solve the problem. So, I could go and get a prescription medicine, and there's tons of brands and tons of ideas on how to do that. I could also go and get some home fitness package. Another option is to start a diet or choose one of the diets that are out there. But I'm really trying to understand the scope of solutions and the landscape of solutions, and now this is becoming more urgent for me because I already know I have a problem. So my goal here, or your goal as a marketer, to help the buyer understand how others solve the problem. Now, where do you do this? Again, trade publications. This is where search engines, blogs, social media, relevant marketplaces all tie in. I mean, it's great to know how others solve the problem, but it's also great to know how my friends in Facebook or a certain Twitter list, which I trust, has solved this problem. So be there and educate on a solution. Be there by using SEO, case studies, videos, webinars just like this, press releases, and even display advertising. Your call to action at this point is, well, read this case study. Watch the video. It's learn more. It's register for the webinar. Again, this is not about your offering, not just yet, but you're really setting the infrastructure here, the thinking in the buyer's mind, well, I need this kind of solution. Now, what you measure here is page views, is visits to how many case study pages were read. It's referring side, and it's really the referring keywords and the impressions that people are using, or in other words, it's how people are really consuming your content to understand what their solution needs to be. Now comes the next step. Well, I understand the scope of solutions. I'm going to create myself a short list. There's always a short list involved because there's a lot of work. Whatever makes it to the short list, well, I'm going to start researching. I'm going to start thinking about. This is, as I mentioned earlier, a key step. If you weren't part of the problem and you weren't part of the landscape of solutions, getting to the short list is practically impossible. So start thinking ahead, and at this point, it's really pretty easy or much easier to make the connection now between your brand or your possible solution in the scope of general solutions. So this is where, as a buyer, I select an approach. So in this case, let's say I decided I go for a diet. I evaluate alternatives, different diets, and then I create my short list. Getting to be more about your specific solution here. SEO and PPC are very relevant when I'm a buyer who's looking to create a short list. Relevant marketplaces, third-party sites that offer solutions like mine are a great place to be when someone is looking to build a short list. Again, it's about case studies, demos, videos, customer testimonials are key here now, right? Because I know what the solutions are. I know I have a problem. Well, if others are saying your solution works, this helps me get to my short list. The call to action is becoming more personal here. Well, how about a personalized demonstration? Forget the general demo. Let me talk to you and explain how this can help you. This is more around contacting us. Well, I'm ready to talk to someone, and I'm ready to get into the purchase phase. Now, a call to action is great. What do I measure? Again, it's relevant to the call to action. Number of demo requests, visits to a product page. We're now shortening the shortlist. View of demos, view of personalized demo. Partner site inquiries are all great measurements in order to say, well, evaluation is really being served by my marketing department. Last is validation. What I do here is I contact vendors and validate selection decision. So I have my shortlist, and again, as I mentioned, this takes a while. That's why buyers do create that shortlist, and I start validating. This is sort of the handoff between marketing and sales. This is where if you build the buyer journey, there's a problem, there's a set of solutions, you're on the shortlist, well, it's time for validation. This is where sales kicks in. People come to your website. People come to your Facebook pages. Your public profiles are now approached. Now what you have to do is prove that your company can deliver on the promise to solve the specific problem. Since you're the one seeding the problem, since you're the one educating on the problem, alignment becomes much easier here, and this is where Christine was talking about shortening the sales cycles. This gets much shorter and really streamlines that process. How do you do this? Well, you get free trials in the door. You get ROI calculators. You get tie my problem and make sure there's a valid solution you provide. Customer testimonials, again, key here. Call to action, specific and actionable. I'm ready to do something. Well, great. Start your free trial. Get a free sample. You're now looking to come in the door, and I got to give you an easy step in order to step inside and start validating my solution. Again, measure what matters for this piece. Free trial signups, lead sources, visit referral types, referring keywords and referring campaigns should all be kicking in now as customers are ready to validate their solutions. So let me just step back and touch again on the end-to-end buyer enablement. So we started with the problem, solution search, evaluation, validation, and now we're at purchase for sales. What you want to do, and these are we try to bring in 7 tips for the buyer enablement stage. Be where the audience is. They're not coming to you just yet. They're not ready to validate. So be where they are. Provide value and build your brand. Make sure that you're out there when people are looking to define their problems and find their solutions. Stay top of mind and always align the call to action with the stage and place. If someone is trying to define a problem and your call to action is get a free trial, there's misalignment here. They're not ready. They don't even know they have a problem yet. On the flip side, if you're doing validation and your call to action is reading another white paper, they're like, no, I'm ready. You have a missed opportunity. So make sure you align the calls to action with the buyer's journey and where they are. As always, make your value proposition clear and consistent. Buyers are going through these stages, sometimes in a sequential way, sometimes in a somewhat of a parallel and overlapping fashion. Make sure your value proposition is constant across the journey. Make it easy always to reach out and learn more. No matter which step I'm in, there's always a need to learn more and reach out, make that easy and accessible. And step 7 really ties into my last slide about closing the loop is what you really need to do is know what's working. Well, how do I know what's working? And this is why I touched on what to measure for every step. It's all about looking at these steps from an end-to-end perspective. So we have 3 categories. We typically have our customers measure on a regular basis, tune on a regular basis, and refine and change as they find out more. There's a set of search indicators. So I mentioned this in a few steps. Tell me which keywords, which search engines, or which sites are really working for me. There's a set of social indicators. Well, how many likes, how many +1s, how many shares and comments, retweets, followers am I getting? How influential am I as a brand in social networks? And the third is really closing the loop on business indicators. Well, at the end of the day, how many page views, visitors, conversion, and most of all revenue did I bring in? If you just measure one of these, you typically get a partial picture. The idea, if you're really buying into the buyer's journey and you want to make sure you're hitting them at that 70% of the buy cycle when they aren't yet ready to make a decision, you want to measure end-to-end, connect between these metrics, and refine your story as you learn more from the data. So, Chris, I think I'll turn it back to you now. I think we have a few key takeaways we wanted to cover. Right. I know there's also a Q&A session planned, so back to you.
Good. I'm ready to dive into the Q&A and let the audience know they are welcome to submit more questions. We will get to as many as we can during the live. And I'm going to jump right in and make sure, first I'd like to make sure that our friend Christine is back. Are you back, Christine?
I am. Okay,
terrific. Thanks. And I'm going to go ahead and push out the first question. This is actually a very interesting question. How would you identify what stage a contact or lead is in?
Well, I'll start with that, and I think the first place you need to start is, and so here's a baseline assumption, is that you've done the research to really understand what are the discrete steps that are in each of the stages of the buyer's journey. So if you understand what they've done in problem definition, solution search, and validation, then when you start seeing the behavior of that particular contact and lead, you're going to start to realize, oh, they may be in this stage and they may be in that stage. And again, this is where the marketing automation system can be really helpful. You're going to do primary research to understand what the buyer's journey is on that invisible part, and then a really neat trick is to take all the data that sits in your marketing automation system and actually analyze it or dump it into a data mart and look at it longitudinally. All of that will give you a backdrop from which to then take contact and lead and pinpoint where they are in that buyer's journey.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with Christine. It's all about the buyer's activity. Activity really tells you the story. And sort of thinking about it in the context of the buyer's journey helps you frame that activity. But a page view now becomes more critical than just being, a hit on your website, because it starts indicating, well, which stage or step within that stage I'm in. So looking at who visits more than once, who visits my product pages, who visits my demo pages, who signed up for a webinar, starts telling me the story about a specific buyer. It's no longer just a set of metrics. It's really a mapping technique that allows me to say, well, this buyer is at this point, and this is how to best approach them.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I mean, you've said it so succinctly, and that is the most important piece is if you have that backdrop, if you have that context, then you actually can act upon that contact or that lead. You have to, it's all about knowing, and that's the difference between the buyer's journey and past models of marketing where you threw a bunch of stuff out there and then maybe it's stuck on the wall. Here it's completely the reverse.
Okay, so let's say this next question is coming. Let's say this person has done their homework and they have studied their contact, and they just still cannot identify where exactly they are in the buyer's journey. What do you think about generic call to action such as contact us?
I think that typically inaction is better than no action. You have to think of.
Can you repeat that again, Erez? You broke up a little bit there.
Yeah, I mean, the way I think about this is inaction is better than no action. Now, you don't want to go to a generic and just say, contact us. Oh, nice that you called. Here's what we have to offer for you. If you use the contact us approach or action to have people contact you and then try to better educate yourself on where they are in that journey, customize the reaction to that, that's when this will become successful. So if I'm as a buyer know where I am, I'm not going to hit this generic call to action. If I do, I want to hear someone who's asking me the right questions, mapping me to the right place in my journey, as opposed to saying, hey, we got this great new product, I hope it can help you.
Yeah, and he's dead on the money on that one. I think the other thing that I would like to add to this is something that we really haven't talked about because we've been sort of restricted on time, is that this is not just about marketing. This is also about sales. That says that, helping the sales team understand what the journey is and how to actually have an informed conversation based upon the knowledge that the company has, what's in the marketing automation system and what the buyer has actually done, enables them to directly counter that 3% statistic I started at the very beginning. 97% of those conversations add no value because they're completely out, the sales guy is completely out of the loop in terms of what's actually happening. So let me just add that one piece to the great answer that Erez had. Okay, and this one is along that same line. Is it still just studying your lead and your contact information as much as you can? The question is, how do you know what really drove a deal? Well, we come back to...
Go ahead, Christine.
Yeah, let me just start real quick, and I'll pass it to you. It starts off with, again, remember how we talked about outcomes? And then remember how we talked about at the very beginning of the buyer's journey, there is this, there's this trigger event that starts to happen. You know what's going to drive the deal by, first of all, understanding the trigger event and then understanding the outcome that they sought. What really then helps you to give you insight in terms of did it really actually accelerate the deal, right? Your knowledge of the buyer's journey and how you align to it is when you start looking at the metrics that Erez actually talked about and that Optify delivers. I mean, you have to really, really watch those metrics because the buyer's journeys do change, not just by role but also by target industry. They change all the time based upon new information channels that are available.
I mean, this is sort of the one constant question we get over and over as we work with online marketers. Again, sort of how do I really close the loop? How do I know what really drove a deal? And I absolutely agree with Christine. First, you need to understand what you're trying to answer. Well, what drove it? If you just look at the first touch, not sure that makes sense. If you look at the metrics along the way, it helps you define more of the journey or the optimal journey that drove a deal. I think that's important. It's also important to see what drove a quick deal.
We lost you for a second there again, Erez, so say that one more time.
It's also important to see what drove the speed of the deal, what helped close a deal faster. And if we're learning something about the buyer's journey that helps us accelerate this process, I mean, there are multiple steps here, but frankly, for some buyers, they can happen during a day, or based on a product, they could happen in a week. So the fact there are multiple steps here doesn't mean you cannot really accelerate this. So turns out that some of the learnings you get from a deal is what accelerated it, which allows you to then run acceleration campaigns on buyers that fit that profile.
All right, I'm going to move on to the next question because we've got a few more we'd like to get to today. So next question is, does the buyer's journey model also work for companies on their B2C sales in addition to B2B sales?
Yes, it does. It looks very different. The stages are basically the same, but it looks very different for B2C than it does for B2B, because it's just a different mechanism. But if we look at what's happening to the B2B marketing model and to the B2B sales model, a lot of it actually came out of the B2C world and the impact that social media has had on how B2C sales actually work. So you can actually do the exact same thing. In many respects, it's a little bit easier on the B2C world because you're able to collect an awful lot more information about the buyer's journey through different mechanisms because of the relationship that buyers want to have with the brand and with the company. So absolutely. Works in both worlds. It just looks a little differently.
Yeah, I think in the world of measuring the journey, what happens is in B2B, you really measure the specific buyer. You know who they are. They have a name, they have a profile, and you sort of build that profile and prioritize them as you go through the journey, or as they go through the journey. When it comes to B2C and measurement, there's a lot of aggregate numbers. Well, I had 100,000 people do this, and 20,000 people watch my Facebook page. So it now helps me understand at the aggregate how people are reaching my solution. So you measure the same things, but the metrics or the units of the metrics are different because of the different nature of the business.
Okay, you know what, Erez, I would like to pull back this key takeaways for you to summarize everything for our audience today. So we've got a lot of information, and like I told everybody, we will have this online so you can look at it again, but I think it's a good time to do that right now if you wouldn't mind.
Sure, I think that's a great idea. Christine, why don't you take it from the top, and I'll just cover the bottom three.
Okay, I will definitely do that. I think, the key piece that I want to, which is the first takeaway, is something that we all need to keep in mind, in that in the world today, buying is social, trust-based, self-directed, and transparent. And the key is, the two words here are, the two phrases I should say, are self-directed and trust-based. The age in which there were very few and clearly defined information channels in which the salesperson was looked at as being the advisor, the guide, the source of all insight is really been turned on its head, and it's now the buyer will define on their own how they're going about it. I mean, the statistic is something like 63% of all executives will access more than 3+ pieces of digital information as they research a purchase decision. So it's, they're off on their own. So the key is the second phrase, which is develop trust. You have to develop trust. You have to be viewed as being an expert and not as just somebody who's just trying to push the product. And the key is social media and the social channels. And when I say social media, I mean more than just Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. I mean there's a billion different sites out there. It's not just those three. Is really understanding how do they play into your buyers and your buyer's journey and what influences and where do they go to get information. And it's only by understanding that, and again, I go back to do the primary research, look at the longitudinal data that's in your marketing automation system, and then align the marketing assets to that buyer's journey. And you're going to find 50% of your marketing assets aren't used. And you know what? That's okay. Don't use them. And you're going to find that there are other marketing assets and sales assets that are needed, and that's okay. That's where you're going to go invest. And so we need to let go of those sacred cows inside of an organization because someone really likes that white paper. Well, if nobody reads it, don't do it. So it's really about aligning it and focusing on how do I deliver that experience? How do I mix up physical and virtual? How do I mix up value in the form of best practices in terms of different assets in order to build that trust so that person will actually engage with me earlier? So I'm going to turn it over to you, Erez.
Yeah, I think that the last 3 points are one around, and I think we started off with this as a poll question, that marketing is a mix. Okay, the idea is to use the right tools at the right time, hit the audience where they are. We don't use tools or tactics for the sake of using more tactics. We use them in order to fit into the different steps or the different stages within the buyer's journey. Out of these steps, it's key, or aligning call to action and the tactic with the buyer's journey is crucial for success. You got to make sure you have that alignment. You got to make sure you set the stage correctly, but then also provided an easy, simple to consume call to action that fits the buyer's state of mind at that time. And third, around tracking and measurement, don't just track a specific step or stage. Track the journey. Think of your metrics, well, how do they map to this journey? Why do I need to measure this, and what does the measurement mean to me in terms of that journey? That allows you to do, well, first collect the right set of metrics, refine the right refinements over time, and improve and accelerate your sales process as you go about that.
All right. Well, thank you very much, both of you, for a very informative presentation. And as I mentioned earlier, anybody can watch this online again on demand this afternoon. I'll have it ready for you. If you have more questions for Optify or Christine, this is their contact information right up there, optify.net, and Christine is Christine Crandell at newbiz.com. So go ahead and check those out if you need more information or would like some more information, okay? That is all we have for our broadcast today. We have another one coming up on next Thursday, on December 15th, Google's recent algorithm changes. So please join us for that one. You can sign up at searchmarketingnow.com. That's all we have for today, so thanks for joining us, and we'll see you here next time right here at Search Marketing Now.